Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
As a small business owner, when you first think of network, immediately goes to money and who can I promote my product or service to? Who is the most my ideal target audience of who's going to be my buyers? But your network is more about finding mentors, who's ahead of you for you to aspire to become and pick their brain and skip the hurdles that they already went through.
You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a productivity coach certified in positive psychology and stress management. Join me as we explore ways to live a more proactive, positive life with episodes on productivity, self-awareness, mindset, entrepreneur life, habits and systems, simplicity, fun, and more. I understand overwhelm personally as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife and mom to kids and cats, and as a caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and thanks to the most amazing network, I'm celebrating Positively Living becoming a top 3% worldwide podcast and cruising past 29,000 downloads. That network that helped me do this includes you. So let me start by thanking you for listening. You are an integral part of this collaborative effort because listeners are necessary to have a viable podcast. Two other important parts of my network include my guests, who have shared the podcast with their audiences and often become regular listeners themselves, and my incredible podcast team at Galati Media, who edit and design this show to ensure the best quality and the best experience for you. I am grateful to everyone for making this possible. This is one example of why networks are crucial to our success. There are many reasons why we would want to build a network, and today we're talking about those reasons and sharing best practices for building one. We're also covering what to do with your network once you've started building it. Collaboration is one of the many benefits of networking, and my guests, Sara Lowell and Dana Johnson, are examples of that and have joined me to share their experiences. I was on their podcast, Entrepreneur Encounter, which they started together after meeting through networking. While they both offer different services and solutions for their clients, Dana and Sara come together as a team to help business owners elevate their services through soft skill training. They create a clear path to improving client relationships and building consistent referral streams. In this episode, they share stories and specific examples of how they approach networking online and in person, including ways to meet new people and how to nurture those connections that have been made. You'll want to listen for references to support extroverts when it comes to that in-person networking especially. Although we tease, there are some excellent takeaways in this conversation for extroverts, introverts, and everyone in between. My favorite aspect of our discussion today is the idea of relationships over revenue. We are connecting with others to build trust and community. Once we do, the revenue follows. Networking can happen through groups, but also with something as simple as a coffee chat, which is one of my favorites. Not only because of the coffee part, but because I appreciate the one-on-one connection where I can ask and answer lots of questions and truly get to know someone. If that's something you'd like to do, I welcome you to head to my Connect page on the website, positivelyproductive.com/connect, and choose a way to reach me that feels best to you. You can type a message directly to me or book a time to meet with me, either through a collaboration chat That's if you want to get to know each other business to business, or a discovery call if you're curious about what having me as a coach would be like, and to receive a bit of free coaching in the process. Now let's join Sara and Dana to talk about making your network work for you. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast, Sara and Dana. I was honored to be on your podcast, Entrepreneur Encounter, and I'm delighted to be able to reciprocate and welcome you into my space today.
Thank you. I'm so
Thank
excited.
you. I'm oddly nervous, so.
You know what? We'll call it nerve-sighted, and that's because we have such good things to talk about. So let's start with Sara, and then we'll go with Dana. Just a quick intro from both of you. I'd love to know a bit about who you are and who you help. And I think my favorite part of the question, and you can start with this, is what makes you light up?
My name is Sara Lowell. I'm the owner of You Are Rembert, LLC. What lights me up is human connection, to be honest with you. I love interacting with people, and I am a business manager.
My name is Dana Johnson. I'm the owner of Dana's Desk Virtual Management. I support wedding professionals with virtual assistant admin tasks, as well as Pinterest management, and really helping them grow their brand and visibility through organic methods. What lights me up? Probably too many things. It probably depends on the day and the way the wind is blowing. But currently, I am obsessing over Dungeons and Dragons because my son and I have been remaking characters and things together, and that's always fun.
I love that. So, there's a creativity aspect to it. I feel like that's a thread that follows you quite a bit. In my experience with both of you on your podcast is that something that lights you up is making connections. And that's what we were able to do and what we're going to be talking about today. And this idea of building a network, connecting with others, and finding a way to, I feel like it's sort of exponentially grow the efforts that you make. In day-to-day life, we have so much going on, right? So much that we have to do in terms of taking care of ourselves and others. What can we do to find ways to support each other and to connect? And that's growing a network is part of that. That's our topic du jour. So either one of you can start, but I'd love to define this idea of what a network is and where we can even find it.
I know when I started my business, I didn't really understand what it meant to find a network because I was creating a virtual online business. So I thought that that was the only way that I could meet people was through connecting with people through social media because I'm an online business and that's how I try to connect. That's what I tried for several months of my business journey. Just on a whim, I was doing some research on how to actually meet people in real life and not online. So I found a local networking group that's in my area, creating those relationships with people that are in the same space that you are in or doing something different, but creating those connections. I didn't realize how important they were until I started doing it because before I started networking, I didn't have anybody like in my family or anybody that I knew that started a business. So I had no idea what to even do. Just kind of went with it. So I started slowly going to local networking events and making connections that way. And now I have people in my support network. Like I made friends, making friends that have businesses because they understand where you're coming from.
As a small business owner, when you first think of network, immediately goes to money and like, who can I promote my product or service to? Who is the most like my ideal target audience of who's going to be my buyers? But your network, just like Sara kind of started, is more about like finding mentors. Who's ahead of you for you to like aspire to become and like pick their brain and skip the hurdles that they already went through. Potential investors, collaborators. Like when I met Sara, I had no interest in being a podcaster. Like it wasn't even on my like lengthy brain map of things I wanted to do. But because we collaborated and stayed in touch through an online community, it now became an option. And then finding them in-person networking events. I have a client, speaking of like real life experience, she doesn't do much on social media. She is a work at home or fractional CFO.
Mm-hmm.
She has a bigger audience than I do on her social media channels, but it's all through in-person networking. She is very consistent with getting out and shaking hands and talking to people directly and then sending them to her like Facebook and Instagram page where she genuinely posts maybe once or twice a month when she feels like it. But she has a very strong following because of the connections that she took time to build and word of mouth and connecting with that network that she started to build.
Yeah, and it sounds like she's bringing them great value and she's very clear with them and probably clear about who they are. So we can keep talking as we go about how we're building it. And I love that you've already touched upon the online and in person. And you touched a little bit, I was curious about this, about how you two connected and found each other and began to work together, because you're a prime example of the collaborative options, right? The opportunities that you have when you network. Let's dig into one spot that I want to make sure that we hit before we talk more tactics again. And that is, you've touched upon this to start, Dana, with this idea. The network is not just about who's your niche audience and who are you promoting to, but rather those connectors who could be mentors or could be collaborators or things like that. So let's talk a bit about the who in terms of us deciding who should be part of our network, or maybe not. Who are you looking for and how do you decide?
One of my favorite, who I've never met in person, she's a coach and like community member. She started with Meta Ads before it was Meta, and then built this community for entrepreneurs and like has a course and memberships and things. But she was a very good example of relationships over revenue. That's a phrase that she said all the time. So completely props to her. I did not come up with it myself. But that I go beyond collecting business cards and genuinely take the time to connect with everyone. When I walk into a room, whether it's at a networking event, I don't look for someone who like I work with wedding pros, but I don't look for just the wedding pros. I look for and talk with everyone because I don't know their network. So those people are essentially my secondary audience, but they're still just as important to me. So I choose to connect with everyone, which is exhausting from time to time. But within their network, use an example, a realtor. There's almost a realtor in every group you go into. I'm going to talk to the realtor because that realtor may help a wedding planner or a salon artist find their retail space. And now they, through their sphere, have wedding professionals that I would never had the opportunity to meet. So by building a relationship with them, and they're now helping this wedding planner find office space or create a venue or whatever their dream is. And they're saying, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out about all the admin tasks that come with now having an office space. Well, then hopefully the relationship that I've built with this realtor, they're like, oh my goodness, well, then you need to talk to Dana because she's an amazing virtual assistant and is a master at client flows and communication. And then that opens the door that I needed.
I think that's a really good point. So I think to start with, it's being open to connect and to build a relationship with anyone and everyone. But I suspect from there, then you see, do you share the same values? Do you share similar audiences? Do you have complementary services? You start to learn more to figure out what the relationship can then look like. And sometimes it can be someone where you may not have an obvious connection, but like you said, could be an advocate for you. I've had people who I will never work with necessarily, but they're huge fans of what I do. So if someone says, I'm in overwhelm and I've tried all the productivity techniques I can, and it's still not working. What do I do? And they're like, oh, talk to Lisa. It's that advocacy. What about your approach, Sara?
The reason why I named my business You Are Rembert, Rembert is my maiden name, and you're welcome to the table. Judgment-free zone. I love human connection. But obviously there are times when people are not going to align with me. So, having the first initial conversation with somebody is great. So you get to know them and then go from there. I'm all about having conversation and talking about different perspectives. But if we're not on the same wavelength of you're always down in the dumps and you're not motivated to keep going and keep going, obviously I want to be there to help somebody, but you can only motivate somebody so much. That's how I see building relationships in my network. But again, like Dana, touched on a very great perspective of meeting somebody that they might know somebody 6 degrees of separation, right? It depends, I guess, on the conversation and how it goes. I've talked to many people and that was it. Depends on if you connect with that person.
Yeah, I think ultimately. So the takeaway here, and you two have both described this beautifully, is the idea of starting open, starting with the connection in mind. And then as you build the relationship, you figure out what the nature of that relationship is. And we learn over time and with experience that it's one of those, I say a lot to my kids, ask me how I know, where there are certain people where you're like, that's great. So we'll keep in touch on LinkedIn and that'll be that. And then there are others that you connect with and you really resonate with and you talk more and you're in groups with, or you invite on your podcast, things like that. So you find those levels of connectivity and you work with each of them in different ways. As I said, there could be advocacy that happens. You could end up with someone who could be a client. And I love what you said before, Dana, about mentors and the idea of who's done this before you. And it doesn't mean that they have to do exactly what you do. It can even be, I'm a mom in the online space, and here are the ways that I've navigated it. And there's ways that you can learn from them. Okay, with that in mind, we will use our gut as we build the relationship to understand where people can fit in. But let's go back to the tactics of how we're going to find them. And I love that you brought up the in-person and the online. Let's start with online just because that seems to be rather prevalent. That's how we met. And then we can step into the in-person as well and maybe also talk about how those two connect more than we think sometimes. So let's start with tactics, like how you go about, what do we need to think of when you start making these connections and finding people for networking online?
Going back to how Dana and I met, honestly, I don't remember what I said in the post. I was saying something about I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't want to do it by myself. I think Dana and I were talking before that.
Yes.
We connected and something stuck, obviously. So we created a beautiful friendship out of that. But it's difficult, honestly, to find people and connect online because, see, my thing is, I want to have a conversation with you. I don't know you. We can have a conversation in the DMs. But let's just get on the Zoom call. Let's have a conversation just to get to know each other. I've had some, but I believe people are truly afraid that they're going to get pitched to, that you're going to get on this call and they're going to be like, oh, buy my services. But it is relationships over revenue because again, you never know. I believe that just getting on on a phone call or Zoom with somebody that you meet online just to have that conversation. And then when it comes to in person, it's different for me, at least, because if I go into a group of people, I'm not one to go up to some in a group of people and have that conversation, start a conversation. I tend to go to an event and just kind of sit there. But the last couple times I went to networking events, I did not do that. I went up to somebody and I started a conversation. It was very scary for me. Honestly, it was very scary. But just talk to somebody. I'm very introverted. When it comes to going into a group of people and having those conversations, I've met some awesome people networking and in person, especially because I'm collaborating with local business owners. Not necessarily they're my clients, but we're working on projects together. And I believe doing that is going to get your name out there.
I think it can be challenging. And I was immediately thinking, and I feel like this is another $1 million idea that I absolutely need to roll with, is creating an agency of support extroverts for your for your networking events in person.
I think that's perfect.
Right?
Hotline.
But yeah, hotline, exactly. I need a support extrovert stat. Yeah, going in with one. But, and I think you've shown this with podcasting, for example. I think that regardless, introvert, extrovert, or otherwise, that the buddy system is so helpful and actually can help spur that on. So if you are able to find someone to sort of attend the event with, again, the first time, is that first step is always a doozy. But something that you described that jumped out to me was this idea that if you show up, even pick one person to talk to, right? Just little baby steps. It all matters. The connections that we make in person can translate online because then they're going to follow you online. I've done some speaking engagements locally, and I have some really avid podcast followers from those engagements, and even someone who like fangirled me recently and was like, oh my God, this is wild and kind of weird and awkward, but also exciting. I don't know how I feel. It was really cool, but meeting in person and then having them hang out with me on the podcast here. You're listening, you know I'm talking about you. Hi. It's awesome. It means so much. All right. So Dana, how about you? What has been your experiences or best practices when it comes to online and or in person?
So I am not an introvert. I am an extrovert. And I need people, or I do start feeling like super down and depressed. However, I don't do public speaking. Like, I need people to talk to, but don't put me on a stage. But I know what works best for me, despite my fear of public speaking, is I put myself uncomfortably in those situations. So I go to networking events where I know ahead of time I'm going to have 30 to 60 seconds to introduce myself in front of everyone. At some point, it may not be when I first get in there, but when I'm in person, my strategy is to look for the extrovert who is kind of hanging off but on the sidelines, because they're looking for comfort and I'm enough of a nurturer. I want to be that comfort. And then that satisfies my need of a one-on-one connection where I can remain the bubblier, more positive person, as opposed to if you throw me in front of everyone else, I'm gonna be like stumbling. I'm not gonna look as professional. So then it's gonna defeat the whole purpose in my mind. So I start small in a networking in-person setting and talk to those that I read their body language. Are they open? Are they hiding on their phone? I'm probably not gonna approach them just yet unless they look like they're hiding. But if they're sitting at a table and they're open and they're also reading the room, then they're open to conversation. So I'm going to go to them first and then work my way around. Online is a little more difficult. So what I try to do is I narrow down the amount of groups I'm in. We'll use Facebook as an example. There's easily a million Facebook groups out there, and not all of them align with my core values. So I don't want to spend time in those. I'm going to find like 3 to 5 where the women or the other entrepreneurs, because I know a lot of women entrepreneurs only work with other women. I work with everybody, but I still want to make sure that the core values are still met. So I only go in 3 or 5. I do an intro post of I'm just looking to connect. I'm not trying to sell anybody my services. This is just who I am. This is why I'm here. And this is who I would like to connect with. I'm using the algorithm to strengthen my network. I'm very clear on that goal and try and schedule coffee chats that way. And then on either case, I do collect, not that anyone can see it, but I have like 5,000 business cards. But I keep up with regularly regularly planned touch points, whether it's just going to their social media and liking and commenting something, whether it's emailing them directly and following up on a conversation that we had a few weeks ago. It can even just be personal. Like if we are Facebook friends or LinkedIn connections and they share a new job position or they added a new service, or they take time off and take their kids to the pumpkin patch. Like, I'm going to cheer them on and wherever they are in their journey and keep it genuine so that if it comes around to, well, hey, I'm actually looking for new clients. Is there anyone in your network that you may be willing and open to connecting me with? I would greatly appreciate it. To me, it doesn't feel salesy and pitchy. We are all in business to make money. We're not nonprofits, but it doesn't have that slimy feel that we as women entrepreneurs usually feel when we're trying to promote our services to people that we know.
Yeah, I think the idea that you're describing, and it's great because you took this into the next part that I wanted to go into, which is how are we nurturing and leveraging this and continuing. So we make the initial connection, and then what? So you're talking about regular touch points, having conversations, and having reasons to connect. And there are so many. It can be something personal where you have things in common and you check on them, or wish them a happy new year, or you see maybe an article that they might be interested in, or you share something of theirs and you keep the conversation going. That's what it sounds like you're describing. And you're right. Then when you have an ask, which isn't always a, hey, want to buy from me? It's a simple ask like, do you know anyone that fits this description because I'm able to help them? Or do you have some thoughts on other people too? Like for me, I like this idea of just building the network. It's not even, do you know people who could work with me? But I loved meeting you. Who else is out there like you?
Yeah.
Let's keep talking about leveraging it as we wrap up our conversation today of things that you can do, maybe ideas, tactics that you can take to stay connected, maybe things that you do. Do you make a point of regularly touching base as much as you can, theme days of a week, or like check in monthly, or like what's your approach? Or is it organic just as you think of it? What do you do?
It depends on my internal vibe check, to be honest. If I feel like it's someone that will lead to a strong, more or less a collaboration, not
Yeah.
necessarily a direct client, then I will set them up in my CRM with like a networking workflow that I have. And every 3 weeks, it alternates between email or engage with on social media. That way, it takes the pressure off of, hey, how's life?
Yeah.
And I could just go and see what they're willing to share. And is it personal right now? Or is it business? Is it a mixture of the two? And if it's really amazing, I'll take that. I may like it, but then I'll email them directly and say, hey, I just wanted to say I saw you signed 2 new clients. You must be super busy. Is there anything that I can help you with? I always offer value first. How can I help you? Not, I offer this service of admin support, blah, 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 because they may not need that. They may just need a coffee chat to where they vent about the overwhelm of adding 2 new clients too fast. I give them the options of like, do you want to chat and like connect and catch up and just vent? Whatever the case may be. I let it flow how it feels like it should.
Yeah, I like that. The way you're describing it's one of my favorites from a productivity standpoint is that you'll set yourself a reminder for a regular check-in, but you'll give yourself the option of, do I want to check in by commenting on social media or directly sending a message, or what's the situation? It's going to depend upon the relationship. It's going to depend upon what you want to share with them or ask of them. It will always depend, but I love the idea of reminding ourselves of that regular check-in. I try to use Fridays to do that, to be like, who do I want to reach out to? And also to say thank you to. We've had a lot of great conversations, or thank you for talking me down.
Well, that's a good one. I need to add that to my
Right? Yeah,
process.
exactly.
Thank you for not letting me do this.
My sanity, and I thank you. How about you, Sarah? What are some of the ways that you remind yourself to connect, or how you connect with those that you've initially networked with?
It depends on who I connected with. I have some people that I talk to on a regular basis. I think we're just like at that more friendship level, but we're both business owners. So we just kind of like, hey, how's your day going? What do you need today? Like that's, the friendship level. And then it's like just here's a business card connection. I try really hard to get people's phone number. I know some people are kind of like weird about that because I'd rather get on the phone with somebody, to be honest with you. But obviously, if they don't want to do that, then we can find a different way to connect. So it depends on the person who I've connected with.
And that makes sense because part of relationship building is understanding someone's preferences, right? And respecting
Exactly.
those boundaries. And I think over the course of time, one of the things that you both touched upon, I'm so glad that you did, is that as we're networking, as we're creating these relationships, we have to show others that we're not there to pitch them and to sell them, because it is slimy and awful. And it happens to me all the time. It's one of those ask me how I know. And the only way I think we can get beyond that is to build that trust one conversation at a time. So I love what you're describing.
Can I share a real life example? I know I've talked about it on our podcast before, but this is how much relationships over revenue can genuinely benefit and like maximize your leverage. I was connected with a commercial real estate agent actually maybe 2 years ago. And we had a coffee chat. She did need support. She came to the call knowing that she needed some sort of admin help. And I talked to her. I listened to her. She actually mentioned a few personal things that were going on, like something with her sink had overflowed. So then I connected her with someone I knew in plumbing and whatever else. But then she saw my proposal and she said currently she could not afford my pricing. And I was like, I completely understand. Like, this is as low as I can go. Like, I can't go less than 10 hours, or I feel like I would be wasting your time because I wouldn't be able to get anything productively done in less than 10 hours a month. Like, it'll be like one task, and I don't think that's beneficial. But at the time, I had a virtual assistant helping me based in the Philippines. And so her hourly rate, she told me what her hourly rate was. I was transparent. I was like, you will not find someone in the States for that amount. But I know my assistant will work directly for you because she takes on clients on her own and will match or accept that rate. It's actually higher than what I pay her, but less than what I charge. So I connected them. And then for about a year, they worked together and her business continued to grow. And then she reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm at a next level or next phase in my business. I would love to reconnect. And now she is my client and can afford my pricing. I will say she slightly slipped through the cracks. I would like a little bit, but it wasn't as intentional as it should have been. But she still came back because I didn't force her into a sale. I didn't shame her that she couldn't afford my pricing at the time. I supported her goals, even though it wasn't me directly that could meet them or accomplish them. And it worked.
This is a great example. You were there to offer value. You were there to offer support, which when you build a relationship, a positive one, that's what it's about. It's like, I'll help you in whatever way I can. And it's not about what I'm getting out of it. It's about us supporting each other. And she remembered that. And you built something, the most important thing that we need for any good relationship is trust.
Exactly.
I love that. That's a great example. And then on I wouldn't call it a lesser level. I would just call it a different level. I will compliment you both in that after I was on your podcast, we stayed connected. We're on LinkedIn. I like and engage in your posts, and I share your podcast more than I do others. And that's because of the positive experience we had and the quality conversation that we had. And I'm particular about who I promote. So that's just a great example where we don't know where this will take us, but it also brought you on here. I was like, I want to have another conversation with them. Let's bring them onto the podcast. And that's just a very simple example. But like you said in the very beginning, both of you described it this way, you never know what will come of it. But building that network, staying open. I love that everyone's welcome at the table, staying open of judgment. I love this idea of building trust. Excellent. Okay. As we wrap up here, we get into some fun questions. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listener with to inspire making your network work for you?
I would say start small. Don't feel like you have to talk to everyone, and give yourself permission to share your voice, because most of the time the hard part is just saying, hi, I'm Dana. and then letting it just go from there. Stay in that one moment instead of trying to go 10 steps ahead where you're giving your introduction that's 30 or 60 seconds in front of everyone else. That's going to cripple you and you won't be able to speak.
Love that. That's great advice. Sara, any final thoughts to leave us with today?
Have fun with the conversations you have. Everybody might not have the same perspective as you, but to be honest, it's actually quite interesting to hear what other people think. So have fun with it.
Have fun. Stay curious. I love that. Okay. We will have where we can find you in the show notes. And of course, I've mentioned the Entrepreneur Encounter podcast, and I'll definitely have a link to our episode in the show notes as well. So are you both ready for a little fun with our rapid wrap up?
Let's do it.
Okay. So for each of you, we'll start Sara and then Dana. The first question, fill in the blank, is a song that lifts my spirits, makes me dance.
Own it.
Okay.
I would say anything by Britney Spears.
I will pick one because I add to the Positively Living podcast Spotify dance playlist. I think I'm probably ready for volume 4 now. So I'll pick a Britney Spears song in your honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
How about a quote or a mantra that inspires me or that I share, or maybe that's on my bookshelf?
Find the joy in everything. My dad sent me that yesterday.
I love that.
I am enough is usually what I say the most.
That is a mantra that we all need to live by. I love that. A resource. It could be a book, an app, anything. And not even related to this topic, but that made my life better is?
Dana.
I'm currently obsessed with a 12-week year.
No, I'm picking Dana. That's
Oh.
Okay, now I can't put Dana on my favorites page of the website, unfortunately, although I can put her on my podcast page because of this episode. However, the 12-week year, I do have that book on the favorites page, so you can find it there. And then last but definitely not least, Sara and Dana, what are you grateful for today?
Giving my kids high fives before they get out of the car.
Ooh. I need to do that.
Love that.
Grateful for today. Honestly, I'm going to use network since it aligns. I am super grateful for having a flexible and supportive network. So while I'm recording this podcast, my friend is going to pick up my daughter from preschool. So I can do this and not stress about, oh my gosh, I got to get off and run.
I love that. Well, I'm grateful for that too. I'm grateful for the flexibility that I have to take my kids to school and then get here and then have a conversation like this that inspires. And I'm grateful for both of you that we connected and that you joined me here on the podcast today. So thank you so much for doing what you do, shining your light in this world, and for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.